In today's show, the long wait is finally over. The Blazers are playing a preseason game at long last. Let's talk about the exhibition season and how to watch this team. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen and tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. After 29 other teams have started their exhibition season, the Blazers finally will become team number 30 on Friday evening in Seattle when they play the Los Angeles Clippers, the last team in the league to play a preseason game. My goodness, if it feels like we've been waiting forever, this particular fan base has been waiting longer than all of the others. The Kings on Wednesday beat the Blazers to the punch by 2 days as the 29th team to play a preseason game. My goodness, Portland's finally doing it. So what I want to do in today's show is talk about what to watch in preseason. A little bit of news, some Denny news, some Chauncey Billups news. And then I kind of want to get into like how I watch preseason, what to make of it. And then I want to answer the question, does this matter? Does this matter? Does it like, should we, if we do feel like we're learning things in preseason, what are we learning? Like what can we actually glean from the exhibition season? Because it can be a little disjointed. Let's start with the news, though, before we get into how to watch and whether it matters or not. Deni Avdija will not play on Friday evening in Seattle. He will be observing Yom Kippur, one of the high holidays in Judaism. Deni announced that today on his Instagram. In Hebrew, hard to read, but I guess if you're a good sleuth and a big fan at this point, you're going to learn Hebrew so you can read Deni's Instagram posts. I learned it because I got some clarification from my Blazers spokesperson who said that while Deni will not play on Friday in Seattle, he will play or is expected to play, I guess is maybe the more political way to put it. But a Blazers spokesperson told me that that Deni will play against the Kings on Saturday in Sacramento in the Blazers' second preseason game to this weekend after the long wait. The Deni stuff makes it a little bit tricky because like some of the for the most part, under Chauncey Billups, the lineups in preseason have been telling. He'll just play, at least the first half, if not the first three quarters, but at least the first half. He'll just play like what amounts to a regular rotation, and then at some point you get the 10th, 11th, 12th guys coming in the game, and like, okay, those dudes are out. The first 9 guys who played, the 10th guy is the 10th man, and everything else you kind of figure out behind it. It is typically straightforward. There aren't really surprises. He's not like he hasn't. In Billups' 3 preseasons, he hasn't like done a bunch of subterfuge and try to trick anyone in the preseason. He's mostly, I don't know if he's treated like a dress rehearsal, but he has said, here's the rhythm we're going to play with, and this is the rhythm we're going to play with when it starts. So you can actually you can just look at the rotation and you can say, okay, here's how it works. Without Deni, we won't get the rotation, right? Like we won't get full clarity because obviously Denny's going to start and play a bunch of minutes, but I think we'll understand the pecking order. We won't get like that sort of starting lineup preview, but we'll probably get a good sense of the pecking order, probably a good sense of, whether it's Toumani or whoever it might be. My guess is it's Toumani. I would be surprised if it wasn't. My guess would be Toumani. In that starting lineup, I'm going to guess now, and I don't think they have to release lineups until way late. They don't have to release an official injury report, I believe, in preseason because it's all fake, which is fine. The injury report is mostly for gamblers, and shouldn't probably gamble on NBA preseason games. But I would guess it's going to be Anthony Simons, Scoot Anderson, Toumani Camara, Jeremy Grant, and DeAndre Ayton. But there's a chance that the Blazers, because they have another game on Sunday and they're going to travel for that game, there's a chance that they hold a bunch of people out, or they mix and match things, or it's funky dunky. Like we shall see. But as far as I know, Deni and along with Shaedon Sharpe and Rob Williams are the only players who are as I'm recording this on Thursday evening, known to miss the game. The other bit of news: Chauncey Billups getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. So on Sunday, that was when the ceremony is, and I believe you'll be able to watch it on NBA TV. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it's televised certainly, and I'm almost certain it's on NBA TV. But he's going to leave straight from the game in Seattle and going to fly across country to get to the East Coast and do Hall of Fame, the necessary Hall of Fame things. Some of the Blazers front office, including Joe Cronin, I know for sure Joe Cronin, but I imagine others as well are gonna join him. So the Blazers will have, while the whole team is in Seattle right now, they went to the Seahawks game this evening, courtesy of the Allen Estate, and it's good to know people. They're gonna go. So Billups will not be on the bench on Sunday against the Kings. The way I understand how the coaching staff works, I believe Nate Bjorkgren will be the head coach this weekend on Sunday evening. I guess Friday's the weekend also. On Sunday when they play the Kings. It could be anyone, but my understanding is that Bjorkgren has been hired as the associate head coach or whatever, lead assistant. I don't know exactly what the title is, lead assistant. And so he would be next in line to coach the team. And so you will get a Nate Bjorkgren game on Sunday. Preseason's not particularly telling, but I guess it gives you, again, if you're getting a sense of the pecking order, you're going to kind of getting the sense of the coaching pecking order with Chauncey out. And Chauncey will get his big day and get inducted into the Hall of Fame. So I guess preseason to me is, I think figuring out kind of the rotation and how it works, because you can say, okay, well, Billups is going to want to play these guys together, and he's going to want to take, he's probably going to take, if you're going to start Scoot and Anfernee Simons, one of them is going to be your first subs, because that person is then going to come back in and play with the second unit. They're going to be the de facto backup point guard in the typical game. So like who comes out first means who leads the second unit. Is it Anfernee Simons at first and then they let kind of Scoot cook? Is it Scoot first and they bring him back with the second unit? Like, it's obviously you'll play with a little bit of bench guys, but like who is sort of that quote unquote backup point guard? I think that'll be something to watch, but it's not so much of like, beyond that, like I think that stuff matters. It's not so much of what they do, right? The outcome of the games and the individual box score stuff. Like, it's just so, you're only going to play 4 preseason games, 3 of them against NBA teams. You're likely not going to see enough of a sample size of minutes or lineups or anything to be like, this works for sure. But you will get to see a little bit of how, and I think that's important. How do they play? What goes into it? And you'll probably get to see someone who piques your interest. I'm reminded of Tumani Kamara last year. Let's talk about interest piquing and the how they play. What are we really going to be watching with this team in the second segment? Join me there, won't ya? First, though, let's talk Gametime, the app that wants to make it easier for you to buy last-minute tickets to whatever you're looking for: sports, concerts, comedy, theater, all of the stuff that you might need to buy tickets for, you can find on the Gametime app. And what makes Gametime great is because they got a bunch of features that make it the simplest, easiest way to purchase tickets. They got Gametime picks. It's curated picks to say, hey, this is the best seat in this section, go get it. You open up the app, you're going to see the little Gametime logo. You can say, oh, okay, that's one that is a Gametime pick. If you don't like to sit up close, you want to spend a little less money, well, zoom out a little bit, sit further away. You'll find a Gametime pick, cheaper tickets further away as well. Whatever you're looking for, they're going to curate tickets all over the venue so you can save money depending on what kind of experience you want. When I'm using Gametime, I like to toggle in the all-in pricing feature, and that way it shows you the total cost up front, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. You can also get a panoramic view from your seat, so if it's a venue you've never been to before, you can say, what's it going to look like? You can literally, on the app, before you check out, click on the view and scan back and forth on your phone, and you can say, okay, that's exactly what the court or the venue or the stage is going to look like from your seats. So take the guesswork out of buying last-minute tickets with Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying all tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You will get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redemption code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right. So I think there are, I mentioned this, like, don't get caught up in the box score. Like, the box score stuff is like, it's just 3 games. It's like, well, he shot this in preseason. I remember a really funny interaction way back in the day with a colleague of mine at the Oregonian asking Wesley Matthews about free throws in preseason. And this is back when they played 6 games. Some teams play 6 now, but the minimum you could play is 4. Blazers are hitting the minimum. But it used to be 6. You had to play at least 6, and some teams played 7 and 8, and it was just like getting outrageous. 7 is just like obviously way too many exhibition games. But one of my colleagues asked Wesley Matthews about shooting free throws, and Wes was like, what? It's preseason. And Wesley Matthews shot an 80-some% from the free throw line during the regular season. But the box score is going to be enticing, right? When you see the ball go in and then you check the box score and someone goes 7 of 8 from the field, it's like, well, he had a good game, right? And shoot, I'm going to recap the games right here on the podcast. When someone has a good game and they do shoot well in the box score, it's going to be impossible not to mention it. But I think you have to kind of keep things in context. That's what I'm talking about, pecking order, right? Like, if someone plays really well and they get, 14 shots in 22 minutes, it's like, is that dude going to get to shoot the ball 14 times when the game starts? Like, when the games count for real, like, is that going to be their role, or is this a product of preseason? Or it's like, hey, we saw him take 6 shots, 4 of them went in. He's probably not going to shoot that well every single night, but what did he do that definitely sticks out? And I'm reminded of Toumani Camara last year. In Toumani Camara's preseason debut, he goes in just 14 minutes, he has 13 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, goes 5 of 6 from the floor, 2 of 3 from 3, gets an and 1 and hits his only free throw. And I remember saying to myself, and maybe even I certainly shared it on the podcast, maybe even shared it on social media, where I'm like, yo, Toumani Camara can play. I'm in. Like, I'm a believer, or I'm becoming a believer, or I'm trying to become a Toumani Camara believer in the first preseason game, right? Undeniable. But it wasn't that, like, I was like, okay, well, he's averaging like a point per minute. This is a dude who could easily score 25 a game. It's like, he's got some stuff. Like, he does things that help. He's active, and you can see the athleticism, and the shooting was there early, and just like the size and the size and the activity were just so obvious in his first 14 minutes on the exhibition court, that it became clear he was going to play. And 10 games in the season, he's the freaking starter at small forward, right? Like, but it was clear he basically made sure he was in the rotation. So I don't think the games and the production and the box score stuff is entirely meaningless. I just think it needs to be, like, when you're watching the games, try to keep it in context. What's the role? Like, for Toumani, he was never going to be a big feature guy. It's like, oh, he can help. Like, he's going to be in the rotation because he can do stuff. He can be a role player on this roster. What's his role look like? Well, he's definitely going to have one, right? And he was a pretty darn effective rookie. I mean, it took him a little while to figure out how he's going to be effective on offense, but he was a good defender pretty much right away. So I think, you're looking for Toumani's. You're looking for that. In that same game, I looked back and checked the box score to get Toumani specifics. I didn't off the top of my head know that he had 13, 4, and 3. I knew he had a good game, but Jeremy Grant went scoreless in that game. Played about the same number of minutes, about 13 minutes, and he went scoreless. It's like, that's a perfect encapsulation of what an early preseason game looks like. It's like, dang, Toumani can help. And it's like, and Jeremy went scoreless, and it's like, you got to remember these things are going to even out. They're going to, like, the shots are going to have, like, Jeremy's just going to take more shots. He's going to play more. He's going to soak up more possessions. Like, the context of this stuff really matters. The other thing I think that we can learn, and I think that it's important to, this to me is actually like the real value of the exhibition season, is how they play. Not necessarily like what they do and all those things. And like, if the Blazers get shellacked, it's not going to be very fun, but like, it's not that big of a deal, but like, how do they play? They've been talking all preseason about how they're going to play faster. And last year we mentioned it too, but we were so disjointed from the very beginning that we could never play faster. That doesn't make any sense to me, but, you can always play fast. You could play out of control fast. It's like one of the hard thing to do is slow down, right? But whatever. But they were unable to sort of implement a team that actually played fast. They played incredibly slow, and they didn't pass the ball very much. Two of the things they were definitely going to do, and I think this time of year every team talks about it. So it's like, well, let's see it. I think one of the things is like, do they play fast? And fast doesn't mean getting out and running and uncontested dunk layups. Like, transition points is not fast. Transition points does mean you're playing fast, but it's like a rectangles and squares type of thing. You can play quickly out, like, and not score in transition. You can play quickly out of a made basket. It's, do you push up the floor off a make? Do you get the ball out and push up on the floor on the make? Are you getting into action super quickly? Are you looking when you do get defensive rebounds? Do guys go, right? Or does someone grab a rebound, survey, find the point guard comes back and gets it and they dribble up the court, right? Like, or does the point guard like start moving ahead and say, let's, throw an outlet pass, and they really look to push. Like we will be able to see in the first 6 possessions, the first 6 times they touch the ball, how real they are about playing fast. Like, it'll be obvious right away. And I think that's really important. If they're going to do it and they have the personnel to do it, and it would be weird to have Denny Avdia and Scoot Henderson and say, let's see if we can slow this thing down. It's like the guys who you're expecting to take steps and be part of what's next is like, those are guys who are going to play fast. Go ahead and play fast. If some dudes can't, like if Donovan Clingan can't play a really fast-paced NBA game, that's a thing to figure out with him. It's not a thing to tailor your offense around. Go. You want to see him play fast. I think that's it. And on offense, I think on defense, it's like we kind of know what they're going to be. They've been this the last couple of years. They're multiple on defense. They show a really aggressive look with high hedging and recovering. They show a drop look where the big is not like super deep into drop. They show a relatively deep drop look sometimes, and then they play zone. Like they're multiple on defense. So we'll see multiple looks from them. I'm not. I don't think there's a lot of like, ooh, this is new. There might be a little new wrinkles here and there. We'll certainly touch on it, but I don't think there's going to be like a lot of crazy revelations coming on defense. The offense is where you want to see them take steps forward. They were one of the worst offensive teams in the league last year. They hired some coaches in Chris Fleming and Nate Bjorkgren that in theory are going to inject some new life into their offensive creativity. Let's see it. So some of it is like, do they run stuff that has a primary action on the ball, some weak side action away from the ball? Like, so you get, 4 defenders engaged and not just 2 defenders guarding a pick and roll action and everybody else watching. Do they, do they run a bunch of stuff, right? Or do they, or is it relatively vanilla? It might be relatively vanilla because we're early in the preseason, but like, I think you've installed some things in training camp. You've had 2 weeks of camp. What does it look like? Are there new things that we see? And particularly, is it, one of the things they've mentioned in the past, not just playing with like pushing and playing fast, but do they play with pace and purpose in the half court? And by purpose, I mean, like, do they get into an action? Okay, it doesn't work. Swing it to the other side. Swing. Pass to the top of key, pass to the other side. Okay, let's get into an action. That purpose to play quickly and play with pace and to try to take advantage. Moving the ball, just like raw passing. I don't know if like the Blazers are probably going to be a bad shooting team, so I think like maybe judging them by like total assists relative to the league might not be the best way to do it. But like they should be, if they are going to practice what they preach, they should be a team that shares the ball. Like the ball moves and they pass the ball more. They can't be last in like total number of raw passes like they were for a lot of last season. So some of it's just like, do they share the ball a bunch? Do they play with pace in the half court? Do they look to run? And then the other thing I really want to watch, and I think this is the key for me, do they play random when it doesn't work? And what I mean is, in the NBA, there's just not that much stuff you can do. You can run like, hey, we ran this little flare screen that led into a pick and roll, or we ran this thing that got us a totally open side of the floor for our best player, and him versus one guy, and like you can run some creative stuff, right? But most teams run pretty similar actions, and so like you're not gonna fool the defense every time down the floor and get easy stuff. Sometimes they're going to guard what you want to do. They're going to guard your secondary action, and you're going to be stuck. Do the Blazers play in flow out of being stuck? Or a lot of what we saw last season is when the thing got blown up, when the first option didn't work, it would just devolve into isolation. And, some of that is like, that's what Jeremy Grant's comfort zone is. That's probably what Anfernee Simon's comfort zone is. There's some of that's just going to happen because the players on the court are going to have the ball. But it's, do they have more stuff this year installed where it's like, okay, if it doesn't work, we run this, or like, this is a pet action we can get into. We want to throw it in here. We want to cut and screen away. We want to open up these things. Like, when the first option, and this may be hard to see if you don't exactly know, like, when this is a play and this is random breaks down, but I think if you watch it closely, you can start to figure it out. When the design of the play fails, How well do they play just in flow? Do they flow into better things? Do they say, okay, that didn't work, here we go, and they just keep playing, or does it quickly devolve into isolation? That's a big thing for me. It's just like, what do they do when it breaks down? Because last year it was dribble and shoot it. It wasn't like they would get into quick 2-man actions or try something like to quickly like escape. They didn't have escape hatches last year. They had isolation dribbles. We'll see what they do. Game 1 is probably not Friday is not the time to like really judge it, but by the next time you hear these voice, they will have played 2 preseason games, so we'll have a little bit bigger of a sample size to judge from. Speaking of that sample size and preseason, they'll be halfway through their exhibition slate. Does this matter? Plus, I got a really good Chauncey Billups preseason stat to share with you. Join me in the third segment, won't ya? First, though, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I'm recording this at the very tail end of Thursday Night Football. Game's not over, but as Thursday Night Football wraps up, we are on our way into Week 6 of the NFL season. And listen, say you got a hunch when you're watching games on Sunday or maybe during Monday Night Football, you can go to FanDuel, open up the app, America's #1 sportsbook, and you can get in on live betting right there in the app. Well, you can see the latest stats and live play-by-play and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets, so you can be an up-to-the-second informed wagerer. And plus, if you're a new user, if you're new to FanDuel, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and that's FanDuel.com. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Does this matter? Like, do we learn anything in preseason? Is there anything that we see in preseason that is meaningfully predictive? If you had asked me 2 years ago, I would say, of course not. Of course not. Because I had cut my teeth watching, covering the league. I started covering the league in earnest in 2014. This is a decade in the game, covering it damn near every day, and in various capacities. But if you'd asked me at the beginning of Chauncey Billups' tenure whether it mattered, I would have said no, because I had spent the first 7 years of my NBA reporter career covering teams that were competitive and teams that had some veteran guile. And so like when you watched preseason games, like of course it doesn't matter because they're just going to turn it on. And I also watched a bunch of Terry Stotts, Damian Lillard teams that kind of sucked out of the gate, and then got good in January and February and kind of like made late season pushes. So maybe I should have put more stock into the preseason because they were a slow starting group typically. But then after Chauncey Billups' first year at the helm, when the Blazers sucked in preseason, they were horrendous. And I was like, you know what? And then they weren't good when the year started. It was like, and it all fell apart, and like the franchise kind of imploded from moving forward. Like I kind of changed my tune, and I said like, yeah, I actually do think preseason matters. I do think it tells us stuff. Like I do think if a team stinks in preseason, they're probably not likely to be very good unless they're just chock full of vets who are like not playing and clearly not interested. I watched a little bit of Kings Warriors last night on Wednesday evening, a couple nights ago as you're listening to this. And like, I felt like the first 4 minutes of the game, the Warriors were just like barely interested, barely engaged. And it's like, oh, this is a team with, their best players are in their 30s, right? Like this is a team that knows that these games don't matter. But I think for teams that are trying to find an identity, or teams that are trying to like take steps forward, or whatever the Blazers are, I think they're certainly more identity than steps forward. Players want to win, like organizations have different goals. But like I do think it's telling. I do think there's some stuff we can learn. But boy, we haven't had many opportunities to learn it. Do you know under Chauncey Billups, the Trailblazers have never beaten an NBA team in preseason? 0-11 against NBA teams. 0-4 his first year, 0-4 his second year, and 0-3 a season ago. They've never beaten an NBA team. They're going to get 3 cracks out of this year. Clippers, Kings, Jazz. That's brutal. So maybe I have changed my tune because I've watched the Blazers straight up never win a preseason game under Chauncey Billups and also not ever be a good team under Chauncey Billups. And I'm like, oh yeah, we learn stuff in the fall. But my take has evolved. I do think it matters now. I do think it's telling. It's not like hyper predictive, right? Like I don't think like if the Blazers win, they'll clearly be good. But it's more like functionally. It's like, does this lineup look competitive against another NBA lineup? No? Okay, well then in the past I would have said, well, they've got time to figure it out or these games don't matter. It's like, that's a thing you can circle. You can say that group doesn't look good. It doesn't mean that it's always going to be the case over the next, couple exhibition games in 82 of the regular season, but it's worth, to me, in the past when I would have ignored it, now I think it matters. It does matter for the Blazers, right? Like, I don't know if like the preseason is going to be helpful for this team because I think they're just in a West that's hyper competitive. They're probably the worst roster in the Western Conference. Like it's just like factually, they're just light on talent compared to the rest of the league. So, like maybe this year, it's like if they struggle in preseason, it's not going to be like, wow, we've learned so much because like they're going to probably struggle during the regular season, right? They're not going to be favored in too many games to begin the year. And probably not all year long. I would imagine during an 82 game regular season, the Blazers will be favored less than 5 times. It is what it is. But the good folks at FanDuel will probably track it. How about that? So I don't know if it matters for them this year, but it does matter for watchability, right? Like if the Blazers are like totally non-competitive this season, it's really going to stink. And like, obviously you're not going to stop listening to Locked On Blazers, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube, but it'll be much easier to check out on a team if they're not competitive and not like entertaining brand of basketball. So I think what maybe the predictive part of preseason for the Blazers is does this team play a fun brand of basketball? Are you excited about what the young players do and how they're used and how the new parts like Denny Avdia and Donovan Clingan are utilized and put into situations to succeed? It matters for watchability. It matters for your sort of general interest. If you watch these preseason games, you're probably a pretty big fan, right? And you're going to be able to get some early judgments of not whether this team's going to win or lose, right? They're going to lose. Spoiler. Maybe they'll lose less. Maybe they'll lose fewer times than I think. But like they have their goals, and their goals are pretty clear. And the front office, the people who make decisions, have been very clear about this team not being very good. Take it up with them, not me. So like, I guess you could take it up with me. You don't really have access to them. but I didn't make the roster. So like if you're watching these games, like it matters for watchability, it matters for your like interest in them. But I also think it matters for individuals. Like it matters for individuals. If Scoot looks pretty good and the team still gets walloped, that's going to matter, right? Because it's like, okay, well, they've got some issues, but Scoot is not the number one at the top of the list. If it's the other way, that's a problem. If Anthony Simons, Jeremy Grant, if the veterans look good and it's just like the young guys in the back half of the roster are just, they cannot compete, okay, that's telling, right? It's like, maybe the like hope that this team has some, interesting depth. Maybe that's not true. It'll be more telling for individuals as opposed to like the holistic outcome of the season. So does this matter? A little. I think I used to think it was meaningless. Now I think it has. I've upgraded it to some meaning. It has some meaning. These games have some meaning. They won't give you all of the answers, but they will point you in the direction that things are headed. You'll say, yeah, you could see this in the fall. Because in 2021, the first year that Chauncey was at the helm, it was clear where that thing was headed. In 2022, they start off really nice out of the gate. They won 10 of 14, but like then they were pretty much terrible after that, right? And a season ago, obviously they kind of never got it going after a three game winning streak. They're never like one of the good teams, never one of the competitive teams. So like, I do think it points you in the right directions. I don't think it gives you all the answers, but I think we'll learn a lot about, I think what we will learn in preseason, to wrap this up here, is we'll learn the pecking order of the roster. We'll learn the style of play, and we will find a Tumani, someone who maybe we didn't think was going to be a contributor, but looks good in preseason. And it's like, they're going to have to play, or someone who you thought was going to have a smaller role, who steps forward and said, oh, they can really hoop, or a veteran who say, this is the best version of him we've seen. what more, this dude who is in year 7, year 12, year 10, whatever it is like, has taken a serious step forward, or at least like is showing consistency during the exhibition season that gives you hope. We will learn who this year's Tumani is. We will learn the pecking order of the roster, and we will learn how they want to play. In that way, undeniably, the exhibition season is meaningful. Come back for Monday's show. The Blazers will have played 2 games. I will recap them here. That's what we do 5 days a week. Blazers basketball's finally back. It took freaking forever. I'm so thankful it is. Tell your friends about the program. Tell them they can get wherever they get podcasts and also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.